All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining this week of Throughline Thursday. We're really excited to have a great bunch of folks here. Um, what we're going to do today is talk about this theme, the holiday slowdown. And I know that we have some different points of view here on how this works, but we have a great mix of speakers on our panel to talk about um, this topic. We're going to break this into basically thirds. One third where we talk about we introduce the speakers themselves. One third where we actually have a little bit of debate and conversation going back and forth, and one third that's wide open for Q&A from the audience. Feel free at any time to introduce yourself in the meeting chat, and to send any questions that you've got in the meeting chat. And Casper and I will work on working them into the conversation, because we want to make sure that we are anything but a boring panel, but everything about being engaging and helpful to the folks who are in attendance. We're asking the folks who are joining as guests to keep your video off until either you come up to speak, or so that we can because we're recording this, we're trying to make it a clean recording, and we're just on standard Zoom, not Zoom for webinar right now. But other than that, what I like to do first is introduce the speakers, and then we will just jump into the conversation. So each of the speakers will introduce themselves, their company, one-line description about what they do and where they're focused, and an opening point of view on this topic. And I'll go clockwise around my screen. And that would be Stonely first, then Jonathan, Helena, Nick, finishing off with William. So Stonely, you want to kick us off?
Yes, thanks. Phil, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. Good to see some familiar faces. So my name is Stonely Blue. I'm a founder and managing partner of Third Sphere. We're a pre-seed and seed stage venture fund focused on thematic investing around climate, and that includes mitigation, which is carbon and GHG emissions reductions, but also resilience and adaptation, adjusting to the realities of climate change. And then finally, circular economy and reducing waste in general. The broad thesis is to improve human systems and the relationship with planetary systems with near future sci-fi. We're 12 years in. We've invested in over 100 companies, with probably a 15 or 20% of those having exited at this point. And we're investing out of our fourth fund. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks so much for being here, Stonely. Great to have you. I'll go next to Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Jonathan Azoff. Also happy to see some familiar faces here. I wear many hats. I am the co-founder and general partner of a deep tech investing firm called Snowcap. We help commercialize science at the earliest stages, uh, obviously with a lens towards climate and sustainability. I'm also the board president of a climate tech incubator and farm called Sweet Farm, where I first met Stonely almost 10 years ago. Um, I am also the initial sponsor of the Climate Film Festival in New York, and from that, have backed a production studio. So I'm also now in film and run a narrative group for which Phil is a part of. Um, and I'm also one of the first individual investors into 90, a climate community hub that is in Seattle and San Francisco. And there's a
Oh,
third prompt.
yeah, we forgot to ask Stonely to do that. The opening point of view on the what's the best practice for founders for the holiday season.
Well, Stonely, you want to answer that first before I do?
Sure. I mean, it really is it's context sensitive and an individual journey. So we'll unpack a little bit of what I mean by that. There's no one size fits all or one answer.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only intellectually honest thing to say. Maybe I'll throw a hot take out. maybe actually do what a lot of your investors are probably doing, which is focusing on family and focusing on the things that matter to them. Because if you truly have high conviction about your business, you're probably going to be building this business for 10 years, in which case a month of your time to recharge and actually like reconnect with your values and with the things you care about and your sanity might serve you better for the year to come. So it may not be the answer you want to hear, but I think it's pretty sound advice. So that's my hot take, and I'm sticking with it.
Outstanding. Great. There was a comment about my audio being a little low. Is this a little better? Okay, super. Thank you. Trying to figure out what's going on. But we're moving in the right direction. So, Helena, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name's Helena Fowler. I'm a doctor of clinical nutrition as well as a co-founder of Mind the Gap Services with my business partner, Sarah Petty. We offer fractional and interim chief marketing officer support at the intersections of marketing strategy, product strategy, and sales ops, primarily for femtech, health tech, or health and wellness, food accessibility, and climate sustainability, thus focusing also on that circular economy aspect. We tend to consider best practices for around this holiday season. Actually, Jonathan, I'm with you there on re-engaging with your purpose and taking time to rejuvenate. But we also think this is a great time to really understand and do an evaluation on what worked, what didn't, why, how to apply some of this the data and the metrics behind that to what it is you want to achieve in the coming year, and to take advantage of everybody else's attention who's going to be listening and doing thought leadership with video and or podcasts and things. People may not necessarily want to meet, but they are happy to listen. So creating some thought leadership is a good thing to do this time of year.
Outstanding. Thanks, Sarah. I think Nick is next.
Nice to meet everybody. Nick Hall, I'm a longtime operator, so I'll kind of get to some of that side for what to do during the season. But I'm the CEO and founder of Giga Climate. We are a climate-focused company builder. So what we do is we find early stage teams and technologies kind of at the formation pre-seed stage with a concept that's getting close to leaving the lab bench and turning into a real business. And then we embed our people into the company to partner with the team and build it from kind of the formation pre-seed to a fast-moving, commercially running Series A company. So we tested this last year, worked really well with the first company in more of the regenerative economy, so pollution removal, pollution control, and carbon removal. And then now we have two more going this year, along with that one with some big announcements coming. And then to the question, what to do is like I've never actually had a holiday slowdown. It always is like the holiday crunch. I would kind of call it much more because it's like you got to do your job and then you're also doing a lot of planning to kind of hit the new year running. I'm going to back up what Jonathan says. What I kind of learned over time as an operator at Impossible and Kite Hill is that take like the Thanksgiving week, which is slower, and try to get as much time to like for family and friends during that period. Then you essentially have 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which everything kind of gets crunched into. And you have a bit of a sprint that is typically pretty heavy, and then take off for the holidays. And it's like the 10 days or 14 days where you really, really get time with family. And so just making sure, at least in those Thanksgiving week and the Christmas week or two, you take time, I found to be the most effective way to do it. But it's like what I've always found during the holidays is you have to hit your objectives for the year, which a lot of times you have end of the year crunches. You're doing performance reviews for employees and just kind of getting your team set up to succeed going forward, and then also doing your strategic and operational planning for your company. And so a lot of that kind of comes into a crunch in December often. And so making sure you balance that with what's really possible getting done was always a tricky balance as an operator.
Outstanding. Thanks, Nick. William, want to bring us home?
Yes, indeed. I thank you. Hey, thanks, Phil, for inviting me. It's been a while, and so I appreciate this. It's been great. Everyone is super accomplished. I feel like turning my video off. So I run a group called Synthesis. We are 20 families, 5 sovereign wealth funds. It's modeled after my mentor's golf club. Jim McLaughlin passed away this summer. He's a former self-proclaimed pole baron who has a private golf club in Virginia called the Old Farm. And it was an introduction for me to this world of private investors and the hierarchy therein. And what we do now is we invest into energy, agriculture, some defense as of late. But they're big families, so everyone does everything. There's not like one particular theme, but the thread that ties us all is the circular economy. I just noted I'm hearing resilience tech a lot more. It's like the new buzzword after climate. So since in this year, everything is about resilience and adaptation, some efficiency tech as well. As to the question, I am an old school sales dude, so I'm all about this is the Christmas run. So my schooling, my business school for me was working in a sales company, and this was the Christmas run. Everybody was going after the end of year marketing money or investment money, any kind of money. This is whether you're raising for a fund or whether you're raising for a private company, you're still asking for money. So that's my old school. I would love to I will take a holiday and we'll take time with friends and family, but that's my hot take. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thanks, William. I'll wrap it up. I'm Phil Dillard, founder of Thruline Networks. We're about 4 years old. We are an impact investing and advisory services firm focused on circular economy, waste to value, regenerative economy, and resilient infrastructure startups. Some of the companies we work with, sorry, I just saw something pop up here a little bit. We provide the services side. It's like a fractional CFO, CRO service, but we also work with companies in their fundraising and are about to launch Fund One in Q1, growing from our initial commitment of 10 million to 50 million, and that's our goal for our fundraise for 2026. So I'll start with the first question that comes to mind. When you think about the holidays slowdown, some people are thinking just about they're just thinking about fundraising, and some people are thinking about in terms of operations, in terms of new opportunities, or in terms of things that are new. So, I'm just going to open this up to whoever wants to take it first, and if you want to indicate that you want to speak by coming off of mute on the stage, that would be great. My impression, what we always hear is from the fundraising perspective, there's not a whole lot of new business that investors take on after Thanksgiving. That investors are focused on closing out positions and allocating open capital that's remaining and taking a victory lap and preparing for the holidays. And there's not a whole lot of new investment activity. Let me tackle that one first and see, what you guys think about that perspective. Who wants to go first?
I'll bite. Because again, it really does, case by case. Like, I think there is in those 3 weeks between Thanksgiving and the final holidays of the year, there's room for wrapping up, and there's a sort of urge to wrap up open threads, and there's definitely a sort of a barrier to adding new things to the plate. So it's certainly tougher to break through and become part of that must finish before the end of the year pile. But in a sense, that's a great way to test how your message resonates. If you have folks who you just couldn't get to before that Thanksgiving break, that sort of you hit the ground running on getting out to them in those first day or twos after the break. Seeing the response there can tell you a lot about how your message is being received, right? It's very possible, especially in a fundraise capacity, with at least some investors, to get a deal done or at least get to a yes in 3 weeks. So it's not impossible, but to get put in the get back to me in the new year bucket, or or various iterations, or just to get the autoresponder and never hear back, like various iterations of that tells you a lot about sort of the first read response. Now there will be some legitimate folks who there's just no capacity, even though there might be interest. But those can always be revisited. It's unlikely, though, that if it's clear that they are not on pace to or not willing to sign up for a fast process, it's very unlikely that that energy will carry the sort of any enthusiasm will carry into the new year. So that's the risk. You might get something hot and the cooling off between Christmas or Hanukkah and New Year could mean that deal never resurfaces because you're at the bottom of the pile when the New Year comes around. So you're playing poker. You're gambling a little bit, but you're also getting some really solid, rare feedback of how exciting your what you're putting out there is.
Do you find that do you have the opinion that in general people are more open or less open to giving feedback because they've kind of allocated that time? Like, when I was in the corporate world, the quarters were pretty predictable if you're on a calendar year, right? And when you're in October and November, we are finishing the planning cycle and allocating the rest of the dollars. And November through the end was cleanup time. So if you were a vendor or a potential partner and you wanted to speak, you wanted to talk to folks, then people were a little more look, they just had more time on their hands to do that, unless they were actually running operationally, like Nick, running operationally to get stuff out the door before the end of the year. But do you feel like folks are more open to having one-on-one friendly conversations?
Well, so that's actually a great question. I'll just jump in. Sorry if anyone else wants to follow, but um, I think it's a horrible time of year to have friendly conversations where you're casually sort of just getting to know them. They'd rather be getting to know their families better. To the point made earlier about the value of the holidays, like folks are looking to double down on existing relationships in a casual sense, versus starting new relationships in a period of time when, again, existing relationships are more priority. Authentic existing relationships are more priority. And that's the barrier, right? And then what breaks through is the difference with venture versus corporate, or at least early stage venture, is there's a certain pride in getting deals done, even though everyone else is quote unquote on vacation. So the earlier you are in like the kind of investor you're talking to or funds you're trying to raise, generally the more reception you'll get to, like, this is exciting. We want to get this done. Let's get you on board. Usually it's a relationship that was already warm, but sometimes it's like a glad we met with at least 3 weeks to sort of get to an answer here. But yeah, that's actually a huge warning to take away from this conversation is this is not the time to slow roll or run a the slow leg of your process, because all that emotion and connection you're building up now will be superseded by existing deep relationships and will be forgotten by the time they get back mid-January.
And I'll add to that a little bit and to kind of, back that up. It's like it's a very good time to connect with existing relationships because it is almost like family in that regard, where it's like people you're closer to. Hey, we haven't talked for, months or even years, but it's coming to the holidays and people are much more open to those existing relationships. And I think that's likely where you're going to get the best feedback too, from people that you have a little trust, back and forth with. But I completely agree. Like starting something from scratch as like kind of the blind cold outreach or even connections is much harder at this time of year.
There is something that I think does introduce urgency for fundraisers during this time of the year. Not all fundraising is created equal, but for the sorts of fundraising that could be potentially beneficial from a tax disposition, I do find that a lot of money tends to exchange hands around this time of year. Um, Taxes being the way they are qualified on a year by year basis. And so often when allocators are creating sort of their projections for the year, they have a sort of pacing that's expected, whether it's venture or off like family offices. There's a sort of expectation of how the year will go, and inevitably some things are on track and some things are behind, whether it's philanthropic giving or it's allocation into companies. Typically on the market rate side, when allocators or investors are putting capital into companies, they may be willing to tolerate slowing down their pace, and certainly they will in tougher markets. But philanthropic giving, at least from my perspective through the nonprofit lens, has been pretty strong in these final months because folks are trying to get those donations in for the tax year. So it kind of depends on what you're fundraising, as well, like the nature of the asset you're raising. Um, but yeah, like for me as like an angel investor, for instance, I tend to get all my angel investments done in the first like 2 months of the year because I've created my budget and I clearly am a sucker for a good story. Um, but and then the rest of the year I'm focusing on my fund, and that's a sort of paced investment strategy, which doesn't really care about seasons or anything like that. It's more just like, am I on pace or am I behind pace? So just something to think about, that like the person you're talking to may have a investment strategy that has a disposition towards your particular raise or not. And understanding the strategy of the person you're fundraising from can be helpful in maybe getting that read that Stonely was talking about earlier. Just like, who am I talking to, and why, would they invest at this time if they even were interested?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I want to make this comment before I ask William what he has to say. Last year, we were working with a company that was, grinding into a fundraise and was talking with an angel investor who wanted to bring in one of his co-investors, who was pretty much more serious guy. And he said, "Look, you want to tap? I want you to tap into this guy's greed, right? I want to tap into the fact the guy wants to make a great deal and he wants to save some money on his taxes. Telling me the story of how he fits under this tax treatment, and we encouraged the founder to rewrite a bit of the story so that he could showcase the benefit of the certain type of investment for the investors' taxes, and it was compelling to him. So it's just something to think about. We have seen that in the world, where folks say, it's the end of the year. Oops, this sort of certain things worked out a certain way. I need to donate here. I need to move money there. And then when you didn't think you had an end of the year capital, you actually did. So that was something we've seen. I've seen at the corporate level and also seen at that family investor level. But William, what's your point of view on this? And welcome,
So,
Sarah.
uh, greetings, Sarah. Um, do you want to introduce yourself? Because we all introduced ourselves. I'm sorry, I didn't want to.
Sure. I didn't want to be disruptive, but I was excited to join. I'm Sarah Petty, co-founder, managing director of Mind the Gap Services. Helena gave a wonderful intro, fractional interim CMO services, 20 plus years experience marketing both corporate Fortune 500 companies and startups alike. So happy to be here. Go on and answer. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. So I love what you said, Jonathan, about sucker for a good story. And in essence, that is what all sales is there's a story to it. I do say this as sales because fundraising, you're asking someone to invest into you, regardless of what the money is or what the purpose of it is. So you have to have a good story. Again, going back to my old school sales experience, which was literally starting as a entry-level sales guy who does not take well to this job. I mean, I'm a film person by background. Getting into it, reading from a script, terrible B2B sales, but it taught me so much, um, including researching your prospects. Like at the end, you start to realize when you start figuring out who you want to approach, you know who these people are. And so some people I do call who I think of, okay, this guy, I know where he is in the holiday season. I know that by day 3 of being at home, he's going to be ready to talk to anyone outside of his family. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but so those people I will definitely call on the cell over the holiday. And there's all kinds of things you can ask for. Yes, absolutely ask for advice. You can get money, ask for money, you get advice. I like that too. Um, but it's a good time, I think, to reach out and frankly, to keep it authentic, by the way. Like, I actually do want to know how some of these people are doing, like what's going on in their world. So there's my 2 cents.
I love it. Yeah, go ahead, Elena.
Just real quick, I think Sarah and I see, at least for a lot of the founders and even some of the VCs that we work with, that there's sometimes this end of year frenzy. Frenzy to use marketing dollars for some of the founders, but also a frenzy to get commitments for funding. And some of the VCs that we talk to, they want to do this, or angel investors, as some of you have said, at the end of the fiscal year, which happens to be the end of their tax year. They want to get a deal in. And so what we found is that a lot of the founders that we work with are pitching like a lot, and they're getting decisive answers. Pros and cons to the decisive answer, right? If it's somebody that they might have been on the fence about, they may have a no. Will they have an opportunity to come back around? Maybe, but they also won't have to sit and wait and wonder for the year end.
Is it a better, we definitely want a fast no before a slow maybe, right? But what's the difference between a no in November, December, and a not now? And how would you guide founders to get the answer of a what do I need to do to fit through the window in 26 versus are you making a decision right now in 25? Could you care to comment on that?
I can only speak from from the feedback that we've heard from partners we have, but the ones that get the no's that we're working with are just not a fit. Early stage, they need to do more proof of concept, more product market fit, whatever it is. It's just not a fit for the fund at the time. Because they're being given a fast no, they're also being given more constructive feedback, which is helpful for the founders at this time.
I would add a little bit on the most of the not nows, unless it's very specific on what the not now reason is also a no. And isn't. So I think that's where you can get that quick no a little easier, as long as you can kind of really understand where it's coming from. But I don't think there's a lot of not nows that come back within 6 months. It's not too common. Maybe a year or 2 years down the road where your business has changed, your different stage, different traction, wherever that ends up being.
I mean, the biggest not now we're hearing is you don't have enough traction. But I think you hear that all the time. You never have enough
Totally.
traction. I see certain risks about your company, and I want to get clarity that that risk is gone. And I'm curious what the source of the not now. Like when we think about it, it would be yes. If you're not a fit, I would just be like, hey, I don't want to waste your time. You're not a fit. We don't do that. But we always want to say there's somebody around that we know who might be helpful, right? If it's a not now, the not now traction is tough. I'm curious if you guys agree that I mean, how many people would say that not now is usually a no until you get to your A or B or something like that? Or is it a solid no? I see William.
Yeah, I think that's probably a no. Go back and figure.
Roger that.
Well,
I see Sarah.
I mean, in the context of the overarching question of this discussion, which is the holidays, not now could in many cases be some part just truly I'm just putting up the walls around what I'm adding to my plate right now, and this hasn't met the threshold for adding it to my plate. And so, I don't think you have to necessarily wait a year, but you do have to come back with some step forward, some new twist, right? So when you come back, mid-Jan or Feb, you're you're not something that you're something brand new and like you've made progress on the round or some, in the context of fundraising, um, you might even, yeah, you might even just want to say, sorry, you could neg them in a sense, right? Sorry, we couldn't make it work then, but I just want to make sure we continue the conversation. It's like, again, the holidays throws a little bit of a wrinkle where it's like a not now that's maybe authentic, but it says a lot about the excitement about what you're doing.
I think that's a good point on like this is any sales thing and like fundraising, like William said, is sales, is you have to have a hook. And your hook in January or December 5th was not good enough to get past that. You come back with the same hook, you're probably not going to get past that. Come back with some sort of iteration or progression on that hook and why you kind of get them really excited. is critical. I see this all the time with like people, like investors, like, oh, I haven't heard for 2 weeks. I'm gonna say, oh, checking in. Anything back on your side? Is like, well, that's not going to get an answer. Very, very seldom. You come back with, hey, we just signed this new deal. Our business is changing this way. It's like we have some really cool updates that, for where we're a little different than we were a month ago. Now that's a higher probability of, a new hook getting interest.
Yeah, Nick, you just got into what I was going to ask about is like best practices for what I call the drip marketing, right? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? If someone says you need to have X number of customers and Y number of revenues, and I go, wow, that's 12 to 24 months, I'd probably want to give them updates quarterly so I'm consistent, but I don't want to come in and say, hey, how's it going? I want to just drop information and be gone, or ask, hey, is it okay to put you on our quarterly update list so that we could showcase, what's going on? When we're talking with folks, I've not heard people say no to that. And then sometimes, 6, 9, 12 months down the road, somebody says, yeah, I've been paying attention. I've been meaning to get back to you about this. Let's talk. And they open the door themselves. Would you agree with that? That's a good practice, or have any tips for best practice?
This point, Phil, I love it. Oh, sorry. Am I
Go ahead. No,
stepping
no, no. Go right. Go ahead.
on? Uh, you know what I like to do is, if there is someone I'm really set on, prospect, I think this guy is perfect for me, or this woman is perfect for what I'm doing. I follow their news too. So I'll call and congratulate them on whatever they're doing. Like, that's a little tip.
Yeah, giving away some of the secret sauce here. That works extremely well. Like, I go follow them on LinkedIn, put all the notifications that come through from what they're doing, and just pay attention. And sometimes a little comment or a thumbs up, but something comes along that's really authentic, and they go, "Well, this is really interesting. I have a question about that. Can we talk about this because we learned the other thing?" And most people respond to their comments in a positive way. I've had that person who I didn't even tell them that I was reaching out to them. They reach out to me and schedule a meeting and doing something like that. So that works really well. Sarah, I see you now.
Agreed. No, I was just going to say that it's just that connection. It's that personable connection, and following somebody on LinkedIn and remembering details. Oh, you have your firstborn starting preschool and coming back, and maybe coming back with something substantial that's happening on your side, but remembering to ask those personable questions and following them on LinkedIn is huge, because who says, who doesn't want a compliment? Who doesn't want a congratulations email or something like that? So you got to go back to the person. I completely agree. It's sales 101. I used to work in the entertainment industry as well, with Scripps and Ridley and Tony Scott, which that was a different ballgame. But sales 101, it's personable. You know everybody's name, and you know what's next for them in their life events as well as professional.
And Sarah, doesn't it give you the opportunity to showcase that you are a real person, appreciating them as a real person? Like, I've used it to bring up different topics. You mentioned, okay, the kids or the business success, or I saw when Stoney did his thing about his MMA stuff. I was like, oh man, that's super cool. I've been meaning to get out and do something. Just give us another reason to talk about different things. And I feel like, saw a different. I asked him some questions about how he was losing weight and how he was training, and I just, it just reminds us that to be people with other people.
Exactly. Exactly.
I would say in general, like the current era we're in social, um, beyond all the growing dark corners of social media, but just so narrowing just in on LinkedIn, the more personal you can be, that still touches on some element of professional development, right? You don't want LinkedIn to become Instagram or anything like that, but to the degree that, in the case of like the fighting stuff, right? There's definitely a vector that connects back to all the things we think about with entrepreneurship, that I won't unpack. And so it is LinkedIn appropriate. Some personal things are LinkedIn appropriate, and so to the degree that you can find those vectors where it's LinkedIn appropriate, personal, you can start to cross that chasm where, to Nick's point, you start to feel like family, or you deepen friend connections, and you'll have people follow up with you on that front. And so those sorts of things are definitely worthwhile activities during the holidays. People are otherwise just inundated with like Black Friday sales and pitches that hopefully help people close quotas, so they'll even more appreciate and they're expecting and receptive to sort of personal updates in this time of year.
I think that I think it's a really good point, and I think it gives an opportunity for some of that thought leadership and social connection that was there. Like I've seen people now, if people take a step back and they're reflecting on the year and things they've learned from different people, they could call them out, they could thank them, do these different things. When you see somebody at a party, I mentioned I was just at a really interesting dinner yesterday and bumped into a couple of people that I've been meaning to speak to. There were two people who came up and said, I've been meaning to talk to you for like 6 months. We really need to put this on the calendar. And then, we talked a little bit about thought leadership and being in the party. People were in this kind of festive mood, but also the energy of creating friendships and relationships that they could build on to win together. So I feel that energy. I'm curious if you all have other places or a means for executing on that energy. What other suggestions would you?
I can jump in on this a little bit. So, well, first of all, I think to answer that question, I want to come just a step backwards to a lot of the themes that were just highlighted, whether it was the drip campaign and following up, or the not now, or the personal, which led into this question, like showing more of yourself. I think there are probably people, I think I've met a very small handful of people who seem to be able to force money to materialize. And it might be because they have a really strong network who would bet on them no matter what. Maybe they're an exited founder. Maybe they bankrolled a lot of their success themselves. Like you sometimes see this with political campaigns, right? But I think for the rest of us, I like to think of it as standing on a circle. And the circle is like a stream of everyone you know in your life and in your business and professional circles. And you were just standing at one point. And when you are trying to fundraise at the end of the year, it's like trying to chase the spot on the circle you want to be, but it's kind of disconnected from your reality. It's disingenuous to you because you're typically and most naturally in one spot, whether it's running your business, doing marketing, whatever your skill is, whatever your strengths is and your business proposition is, that's where you sit. I sometimes joke that it's like, that's how I deal with fashion. Like I will never change how I dress. I just stay at the same spot and every 20 years I become cool again. But, for the rest of the time, I'm just like terrible. I think with fundraising, and part of the reason the personal is so important is people are going to be at different parts of that circle. And as long as they know where to find you, like I try to like the hook I have is like I try to make science sexy again. Like I want scientists to be founders. I want them to feel like they can get out of the lab. And that just sticks in people's minds. And when they meet a scientist who's ready to get funded, they'll find me. I'll be the first person they think about. And so coming back to this idea of capitalizing on energy, how can you stand in the same spot in the circle, but when it becomes the right time for all those folks moving around the circle to find you, that they know to stop when they get to your point and not just flow past you, right? And that may happen in a December. It may happen in other points of the year. But one of the weird, unintuitive things about fundraising is you're kind of always fundraising as long as you're consistent and people know where to find you when they're ready to engage in the thing that you're willing to do. But if you're chasing them, as we see a lot in climate, I think Will called out something that gosh, being in narrative, I feel it so deeply. It's the change from climate tech to climate resilience. And you mentioned you have some exposure to military. Well, dual use is also a popular category we're seeing. That is an example of people chasing the circle. And there is real value in consistency, right? We are selling products ultimately that are a point of view. We think the future will look a certain way, whether you're a VC like myself or a founder building a business. If you are changing your point of view, that might indicate that the initial idea wasn't worth investing in, right? And I hope you find that. And that might be a reason why you hear not now. But once you find it, you should feel that level of conviction and comfort in staying in that spot in the circle. So not everyone will agree with me on this point, by the way. But it's part of the reason I think folks like Al Gore are respected, right? Because they're just like brutally consistent no matter what changes around them. And I think for the purposes of fundraising, there have been times that have been tough for us, and there have been times that have been better for us. But the only thing that changed were the people moving around the circle, not so much us. And I think that's like if you're able to take anything from that, I hope that's a helpful point of view.
Maybe I can add a caveat, Phil, to the resilience text. I don't want to bash on people resilience teching. I actually love it. But politically, that does matter. Like I've got families in our group who are talking to this administration. They just changed you can't go in with climate. The door won't open. So but for the private investors who are the bulk of who we are, yeah, we are still sustainable circle economics, looking for the circular economy, the solutions economy. But yeah, also some dual use.
I think, maybe that's a question that I want to turn to Nick and Sarah and Helena a little bit. Like what I'm hearing is authenticity matters, right? The core of your message needs to be the same. You need to be sensitive to the audience, but and aware of like how you can tell that story in a way that resonates with that other person, right? Like I could say dual use pretty authentically, having been not only a naval officer, but a guy who worked in military procurement and innovation and working with startups. So when somebody goes, I say, well, there is a dual use play for this that makes a lot of sense and it could work in this scenario as long as it doesn't really conflict with your core values and your messaging. It's something to consider because you gotta get where you need to go. But I'm curious, Nick, Sarah, Elena, what do you think about communication of the authenticity that Jonathan was talking about?
I think I can go first on that one. We can kind of go back to the Impossible Food story too, where Pat Brown, our founder, scientist, medical school for 25 years at Stanford, started a food company, and our brand was like his heart. And so whether it's internal to the company or external to every consumer and customer we're selling to, you're getting the true Pat. And I think that got us a lot of respect and credibility in, trying to tackle an industry that's very, very, very hard to change, and enabled us to kind of really start a new category of food and kind of how people looked at the impact of the food system on climate, sustainability, environment, besides all the other stuff. And it's like that's one thing like within Impossible, like Pat was always revered because he was so authentic. He said what was on his mind. He backed it up with science and knowledge and essentially data, and that just helped us become a really trusted brand. I think what we're doing for Giga Climate very similar. It's like, yeah, climate is our name. We've had that conversation. It's like, oh, in this administration, should we take it out of the name? We had a bunch of different ones we had played around with, and it's like, at the end of the day, everything we're doing is really good for the future of the Earth. That can still be represented a lot of different ways. Adaptation resilience has always been a focus for us the last 3 years because we have to do it. Now, does that play a little bit better in this administration now than doing like carbon removal? Yeah, it does. So you do have to consider some of that stuff, but you don't like kind of leave your authentic core for why we're doing what we're doing and how we communicate it. Just might tweak some of the language sometimes as you need to.
Just to follow up on that, if you look at the different stages of Impossible Foods, is it more sensitive at different stages along the journey from, tiny to brand name that everyone knows?
Definitely. I mean, the first 4 years of Impossible's existence, we had four different company names and we were stealth and no one knew what we were doing. And there was a couple of random articles of people trying to guess, but it was really important for us not to be in the public sphere as we figured out what we needed to do to be able to outcompete the animal. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. We didn't have enough power in the industry, kind of ability to kind of control our narrative and our story, which we knew we needed to do. Then once we start building the brand, we have to start taking more control of that narrative. And then that then comes up much differently within the company for how we have to show up. But the authenticity for the first 4 years was all internal, and then some conversations with investors and partners. After that, you have to figure out how to translate that to an external message too that still represents the core of the company. And I can use like we had 5 core values to the company that early science days when it was 47 scientists and 3 non-scientists on the team. How those core values showed up were very different than when we were a 500-person organization and you have manufacturing and marketing and legal and finance. because like what that core value meant to a scientist is very different as a company for what the core value means to a production worker who has to push a button over and over and over again consistently. Now, the core value didn't change, how he described it did. And so you have to make it really connect with your constituent. And sometimes that does, take some finessing.
That makes a lot of sense. Now we are at our last 10 minutes. And as always, this goes super fast. And I've been trying to work in questions that we've gotten in the chat in here. So I think we've got most of them down. There's one question that I want to get to and then ask you guys to talk about either a plug or a priority that you've got for 2026. And then I'm going to recap some of the high points that I've got, some of the key takeaways, and see if I have anything to add. Like the thing I'm thinking about right now is, and it's a little bit in related to what Nick was talking about in terms of operations towards the end of the year. And I was trying to get about end of the year, thinking about operations, supply chain, or different opportunities. Is there anything that you see, just talking about that rush to the end of the year for somebody who is getting something done, where there's an opportunity for a company to do something that helps them stand out?
I can go in. I mean, I've always been a big believer of convening people. I think it's critical to showing who you are and the value you bring and the value of your network. But also, this time of year is a time where people want to be together, especially if you live in colder parts of the world. I'm up in Seattle. It's harder to be outside, so being inside with people is an awesome excuse to still feel connected and close to those around you in your community. Um, and you can use and leverage those opportunities to, of course, progress your own goals. But I think it's a genuine and authentic way to take advantage of this time of year where people crave connectivity.
So you could do something that's as easy as putting together a happy hour, that's even it's a, no host cash bar happy hour for people who are in your sector, or as a thank you to customers or partners. And it doesn't have to be something that's expensive or extravagant. Is that what you're getting at?
Totally. Yeah, and I think you'd be surprised how often the no ask events where there's no objective um, results in a lot of people then just aligning themselves with, you know, what they think your objectives are, and trying to find ways to come out and support you. So yeah, it is a sort of leap of faith sort of thing, and doing events, it takes your time. Sometimes may take some sponsorship, but at the end of the day, I've found them to be tremendously beneficial at all times of the year, but they're the most enjoyable for me personally around this time of year.
That also gives you that opportunity to see how your message is resonating, right? If people come and offer one thing and you're expecting another, there's an opportunity for that clarification then.
Totally.
I think that
I would,
also aligns with the general ethos around family and friends and people who are close to. They don't necessarily get to see all the time, but it's a good opportunity to pull people around you into a dinner or a happy hour, holiday party, whatever it ends up being.
Stone, you were going to add something?
well, I have some examples of what I'm going to suggest as well as some pitfalls. I think gift giving falls in line with that. Historically we've done things like I've personally, and we've done it through Third Sphere, sent out like hundreds of ebooks, um, low carbon footprint, low friction kind of way to sort of share something relevant again to what you do, so you're top of mind. We have in limited numbers for more special relationships done things like send actual like socks or physical things. Um, and in other cases, it's just reminding people of your favorite things um, to consume that might make for good gifts for them. So sort of gift recommendation lists or book recommendation lists, like all of those, that whole category of things. I would say the one caveat or thing to watch out for is to not send stuff that you've written that's long form ahead of the holidays. Well, in general, this may be true, and maybe it's not as true in the holidays because people will actually have time. Because when you've given somebody the debt of reading something that you've written, you may scare them away for the rest of their lives because they never really get around to reading it. Most people put books on their shelves and don't read them. So there's this guilt that comes with like, oh crap, I can't talk to Phil again because he'll ask me about his book and I didn't really actually read it. So that's the one caveat slash warning. Give people things you don't actually expect them to feel accountable for using or reading, but do give gifts.
That's super. I love all that. All right, I'm going to give you guys a couple seconds to think about your plug or your priority or your parting shot as I read out some of the notes that I've taken about what I think are takeaways. I've got, in no particular order, create a hook about yourself that people can remember. Um, Take some time to research your projects and connect with friends and family. Refresh some of your existing relationships, whether they're with investors or partners, so that you can end the year strong and be remembered into the new year. Spend time with family, invest some time to get to know people better. Consider the potential for tax benefits or other benefits of moving money now for that person who you might want to have an opportunity to move money. Follow people's new posts and activities, comment on them, use the digital as well as the physical space to connect with people. Stay authentic and do things where you can showcase your authenticity. Set and use your core values. Make sure that they're clear and they are in the way you operate your business. It's one of the big things that we talk about with founders early on. And then convening and gift giving. A low cost gift can be high value share. So those are some of the takeaways that I had. So I'm going to round robin real quick as we wrap up. Um, I'm just going clockwise around my screen. I would go Nick first, and then I'll just call people out one by one. Nick, you want a ping priority or key takeaway?
No, I think another one you can add to that is you want to hit the new year refreshed and ready to go and really kind of core strategy alignment on your team. So thinking about how with your team, your partners, how you kind of hit the first, second week of January and you're all on the same page, ready to run with a lot of like positive energy. And so then you kind of go into the holidays knowing that's coming, get refreshed, and now you're off and running.
Outstanding. I got Sarah next, then Stoney.
Yeah. So for me, it is you're going so fast during the year and just trying to keep up. What did you miss? And for me, it's a time of reflection of how far we've come as a team. And then I can refresh and then, it's a lot of positivity oozing out of me after that because I feel like I've done a lot and my team has done a lot. And then I can refresh and think, okay, how am I going to what's AI readiness mean to this company? What is all the different factors that are going through my brain? So that's what I do, reflect and refresh.
Outstanding. I love that. Thank you, Sarah. I got Stoney, then Jonathan.
I would encourage at least founders to leverage the relationship value that you do have and in critical things that you do need to get done. So, I think it's perfectly appropriate to apply pressure and urgency. Urgency is a powerful tool, and most of the time we have to manufacture it. And even in the holidays, it's manufactured, but it's very reasonable and understandable when everyone around the table understands that there's a lot of drop off when you transition through the holidays to the new year. And so it's reasonable that you would have urgency to sort of get a critical thing done. So be annoying, be persistent. People absolutely have time. They're just trying to ignore as much as they possibly can. But if it's a solid relationship, you can get a lot done in this period of year if you understand where you are in relations with people and what you urgently need to get done, and you're willing to sort of put that pressure on.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. I got Jonathan, then Helena.
And just to make sure I understand, are we just a summary point for the conversation, or I heard ping and plug?
Yeah, I mean, you could plug something. You could tell people, hey, this is an opportunity, or you could add to the list of kind of takeaways.
Okay, I'll go quick. I think I can do a point, two pings, and a plug. The point is find your spot on the circle and yell as loudly as you can from that spot on the circle. help people find you when they come back around. If I could part anything with people, it's that. I think it's the most useful advice I ever got, and I try to live it every day. The two maybe two pings. I'm a huge abundance mindset person. I think we have an amazing potential with the climate and climate tech community, and so I just want to call out both Nick and Stonely as being like amazing inspirations for me and operators in the space and investors. If you're not working with them, you absolutely should. They are incredible humans. And then my plug is obviously narrative. I care a lot about storytelling. And if you're interested in storytelling as a founder in deeply scientific, technical, or climate related spaces, we throw events. We're doing one in Miami for Art Week. And I'd happily host anyone who'd like to come if you're happening to be there. But please reach out if you want to talk about storytelling as it pertains to climate. Yeah, and thanks for having me, Phil.
Thanks for being here. Always great to have you. Dr. Fowler and then Mr. Dahl.
Thank you. I will keep this quick. I'm also a fan of reflecting at this time of year. I think so many of all of our relationships are based on trust, whether we want to find funding or whether we're trying to meet more people, it's based on trust. So just taking inventory of the resources that you need, but the resources you have to give. And resources aren't just money, it's also your time, it's your energy, it's your expertise, it's your knowledge, and those things can go toward helping to build trust.
And trust is a big part of the whole equation, right? Building that trusted relationship with your potential investor opens the door. William?
Written letters. Think of the last time you got a handwritten letter. Thank you, Phil. This has really been awesome. Thanks for having me and for all of us for making this happen.
Thank you, William, and thank everyone for your time, whether you were speaking or you're just listening. I hope it was valuable. My ping is easy because all the people on the screen are amazing. The more I dig into them and what they're doing, the more I learn from them, and I think you will too. My only plug is if you want to speak to them, reach out. If you don't have their information, reach out to me, and I'll try and connect you. We are working with companies to help them get their plans right for 2026. And we are building our own towards our own fund. So if there's anything that we can do to be helpful, please let us know. And with that, I want to say again, thank you everyone for coming. You are amazing. I really appreciate you and look forward to doing great things together in the near future.
So
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.